Major Vance screamed at the old man. "You stupid, worthless waste of space. Look at my boots." The major was 35, ambitious, and cruel. The man he was screaming at was 65. His name was Joe. He was wearing a gray jumpsuit. He held a mop. "Clean it up," Vance hissed. "On your knees. Use your sleeve if you have to." Joe didn't flinch. He didn't look down. He looked Vance right in the eye. The silence in the hallway was heavy. Young privates walking by stopped and stared. They were terrified of Vance. But Joe wasn't. "I said clean it up, janitor," Vance yelled, stepping closer, invading Joe's personal space. "Or I will make sure you never work on a government contract again. I will bury you." Major Vance thought the gold oak leaf on his shoulder made him a god. He thought Joe was nobody. He mocked the wrong man. Because Major Vance didn't know that inside Joe's locker, wrapped in velvet, was the Medal of Honor. And in 10 minutes, Vance's career would be over. Welcome to Justice Scope. Today's story takes place at Fort Liberty. It's a story about rank versus respect. Before we proceed, kindly tell us where you are watching from in the comments. Major Vance was the new executive officer. He cared about two things: his promotion to lieutenant colonel and making people fear him. He believed fear was leadership. Joe was the night custodian. He moved slow. He said little. He kept the floors of the command center spotless. Most officers didn't even know his name. They just saw a uniform. But the uniform doesn't make the man. The history does. And Joe's history was written in blood. It was 1900 hours. A rainy Tuesday. Major Vance was on edge. The general was arriving in the morning for a surprise inspection. Every file needed to be perfect. Every floor needed to shine. Vance walked out of his office. He saw Joe down the hall. Joe was buffing the floor in front of the briefing room. The buffer was loud. "Are you deaf?" Vance barked. "I am trying to work. Silence this machine." Joe looked at the cord. Then he looked at Vance. "Major, the general wants these floors done before 6 o'clock. The wax needs time to cure." Vance's eyes went wide. A janitor talking back? "I don't care what the schedule says." Vance spat. "I give the orders here. Not you. Not the schedule. Me. You pack up this trash and get out of my sight." Joe took a breath. A long, slow breath. He had held a position against 300 insurgents with nothing but a rifle and a radio. He could handle an angry major. "Sir," Joe said calmly, "if I stop now, the floor will be sticky. The general will notice." "Are you threatening me?" Vance laughed. A cold, ugly laugh. "You think the general cares about you? You are equipment, Joe. Broken equipment. I can replace you with a phone call." Vance pulled out his phone. "In fact, why wait? I'm calling the contracting agency right now. You're fired. Get your things. You have 5 minutes to get off my base before I call the MPs and have you thrown out." The threat hung in the air. This was a first escalation. Vance wasn't just being rude. He was taking away a man's livelihood. Joe didn't beg. He didn't plead. He just nodded slowly. "If that is your order, Major," Joe said. Joe began to coil the cord. His movements were precise. Disciplined. Not the movements of a tired old man. But Vance was too arrogant to notice. Vance felt powerful. He had crushed the insect. He turned back to the briefing room. He needed the classified files inside for the morning inspection. He swiped his ID card. Beep. Red light. Access denied. Vance frowned. He swiped again. Beep. Red light. "Damn it," Vance muttered. He punched in his keypad code. Error. The electronic lock had shorted out. The storm outside had caused a power surge in the secure sector. The door was dead-bolted. Vance began to sweat. The files were in there. The general was coming in 8 hours. If Vance couldn't produce those files, his promotion was gone. He needed maintenance. He looked down the hall. The only person there was Joe, waiting for the elevator. Vance swallowed his pride. He ran toward Joe. "You!" Vance shouted. "The door! It's jammed. Open it." Joe stopped the cart. "I am fired, Major. Remember? I have 4 minutes to leave the base." Vance's face turned purple. I am ordering you to open that door. You have the master override key for the cleaning crews. Joe shook his head. That key is government property, sir. I can't use it if I'm not an employee. That would be a felony. This was the trap. Joe knew the regulations better than the major did. Vance panicked. I will have you arrested for obstruction. Do you hear me? I will ruin your life. Threat number 2. Vance doubled down. Joe looked at the elevator. The doors opened. Major, you have a master key too. In the safe. But you changed the combination yesterday and didn't log it. I saw you. Vance froze. He had changed it, and in his stress, he had forgotten it. Help me, Vance demanded. Not asking. Demanding. Open the door, and I might let you keep your job. Joe smiled. A small, sad smile. You still don't get it, son. It's not about the job. Joe reached into his pocket. He pulled out an old brass skeleton key. It wasn't a standard issue key. It was a ceremonial key given to the base's senior warden. I can open it, Joe said softly, but you have to ask me with respect. Vance looked at the key. He looked at the clock. Desperation took over. Just give me the damn key. Vance lunged for it. Joe didn't strike back. He just stepped out of line of fire. Tactical movement. Respect, Major, Joe said. Fine. Vance screamed. Please, open the door. There was no respect in his voice, only anger. But Joe nodded. He walked to the door. He inserted the brass key. He turned it. The mechanism clicked. The door opened. Vance didn't say thank you. He shoved past Joe into the room. Don't think this saves you, Vance sneered over his shoulder. Get off my base. Now. Joe didn't leave. He stood by the door. He knew who was coming up the other elevator. Major Vance. General Sterling's voice boomed down the hallway. Vance jumped. He ran out of the briefing room. Straightening his tie. He was sweating. General, sir, I wasn't expecting you until 6 o'clock. Change of plans, the general said. He walked briskly, his eyes scanning the hallway. He saw the wet floor. He saw the mop bucket. Vance saw the general looking at the mess. Panic set in. He needed a scapegoat. General, I apologize for staying in the hallway, Vance said quickly, pointing at Joe. This incompetent janitor spilled water everywhere. I was just relieving him of duty. I'm having him escorted out. The general stopped. The 2 colonels stopped. The air left the room. General Sterling looked at Vance. Then he looked past him. At Joe. The general's face softened. He stepped around Major Vance, as if Vance wasn't even there. General Sterling walked right up to the janitor. He stood tall. And then the 3-star general rendered a slow, sharp hand salute. Good evening, Sergeant Major, the general said. Vance blinked. Sergeant Major? Joe stood at attention. His posture changed instantly. The slouch was gone. He returned the salute. Chris, perfect. Good evening, sir, Joe said. I didn't know you were working tonight. Joe, the general said. I thought you retired. I like to stay busy, sir. Keeps the mind sharp, Joe replied. Vance stammered. General? Sir, this man he's just a janitor. General Sterling turned slowly. His eyes were like ice. Just a janitor? The general walked over to Joe's cleaning cart. Hanging on the handle was a worn leather jacket. The general picked it up. He turned it around. The Medal of Honor. Major Vance, the general said, his voice dangerously low. Do you know who this is? Vance shook his head, pale as a ghost. This is Command Sergeant Major Joseph Miller. He pulled my father out of a burning chopper in the Outrang Valley. He took 3 bullets and still carried 2 men to the extraction zone. The general held up the jacket. He doesn't work here because he needs the money. He owns a cleaning company. He works the night shift because he loves his corps, and he loves this base. The silence was deafening. Vance felt his knees shaking. He had just tried to fire a living legend. He had disrespected a man who had more valor in his pinky finger than Vance had in his entire bloodline. I didn't know, Vance whispered. You didn't look, Joe said. He finally looked at Vance. You saw a mop. You didn't see the man. General Sterling stepped closer to Vance. He ripped the Velcro promotion packet off Vance's uniform pocket. You were up for Lieutenant Colonel next month, the general said. He dropped the packet into the dirty mop water. Not anymore. Vance watched his career dissolve in the gray water. General, please. A leader serves, the general barked. A leader respects every link in the chain. If you cannot respect the man who cleans your floor, you are not fit to lead the men who fight on it. The general pointed to the elevator. Get out of my command center, Captain. Captain! He had already been demoted in the general's eyes. Vance walked to the elevator. He was small. He was broken. He didn't look at Joe. He couldn't. As the elevator doors closed on Vance's career, Joe picked up the mop. Leave it, Joe, the general said gently. Let's get a coffee. Joe smiled. Negative, sir. I finished the job. Always. Joe Miller taught Major Vance a lesson that night. Rank is just a piece of metal. It can be taken away. But honor? Honor is forever. He mocked the wrong man, and he paid the price. Respect everyone, from the CEO to the janitor. You never know who you're talking to. If you enjoyed this story, click the like button. Subscribe to Justice Scope for more stories where arrogance gets what it deserves.